Hello, my name is Brian Charmine, again from JoinIT Solutions. Today we're going to be looking at security, at a larger scale. If you have taken a SQL Server database administration training, regardless if that is in a JoinIT or any other training institution, you understand that when you hit the interview process, you get questions about database security a lot. So today we are trying to break this down so you have that wide knowledge on security, not just as a DBA, but as someone in the IT world. You cannot just be talking about security in terms of databases. So if you have 5 years of experience, then you should have some knowledge about security, in general. So we're going to attempt to address this question. How do you ensure security in your environment? Right? This is an open-ended question. If you are asked this question, that's an opportunity for you to sell yourself, defend the 5 years of experience that you have. Don't just talk as a database administrator. You need to break it down. Okay? So the first thing that we'll look at is security is a general concept. We all know there are a lot of things you do to secure your data, even secure your home. The lock you put in your door, and the key, that is for security. Okay, so now let us look at it this way. Excuse me, before we get back, let me grab my water. So when it comes to a company, security is in various layers, right? And you cannot be in the IT field for 5 years not having an understanding of this. Physical security. This is the most important because regardless of how you secure your data, whatever you do on that data, if that data is in the hands of wrong people, if everybody can just get up today, get a computer and sign into it, then there's a possibility that they might breach your data, right? So physical security here starts back at the level of those computers, right? Where do they reside? If you have computers in a data center, physical security here is who has access to get into that physical location, right? Someone can get in there and cause havoc, right? So security in every company starts at the level of physical security. The buildings where those servers, those computers reside, they need to be secure, right? And there are various means. Although that is not your responsibility as a DBA, when talking about security, that's a very important aspect to bring up. The next, we're going to be looking at network security. Yes, computers, are in a network. A network is the interconnection of multiple computer devices, to communicate with one another. So if you have 50 computers within your network, right, you need to ensure that that network is secured, meaning that who has access to get into that network, right? Who has access to get into the network? For example, you might do things like setting up firewalls to prevent certain IP addresses from getting into your network. You might set up firewalls to filter what kind of data needs to get in and out of your network. Now you are securing the entire network. At this point, it is not at the level of individual computers. It is at the level of the company's network in general. So that is also a very important aspect that you need to talk when you're talking about security. Now the next one, you're looking now at device or equipment security, right? A device is simply, let me say, a phone, a computer that someone can log into it. So device security is something that is very important, right? For example, you have your laptop, you have your computer. How is it protected? How is it secure? There is a password there, there are some companies where you will not be able to get into that computer over Wi-Fi. You need to hotwire a cable. So you're actually securing that device, that server itself. Like on your phone, right? When you set a password to get into your phone, that is device security. You're securing that device, So that is another layer of security. Then before we go down to database security. So database security is actually securing the entire database that you have. Companies have hundreds, tens of databases. So there is need for these databases to be secure. But you'll see that If you don't have physical security, network security, and device security, then you cannot even be talking about database security, because a database resides on a device, that device resides in a network, and that network have infrastructures like the servers, the switches, and everything that they reside in a physical location. So security, you have to go through that chain before you even get to the database security. Now, when you get to database security, it also has layers within which you need to follow if you really want to secure the environment. So when we talk of database security, the first thing we're going to be looking at is, how do you secure a database, right? To get to that security, you need to, first of all, at the instance level, when you install SQL Server, which is the database management system in which you use to manage that database. It could be Oracle, it could be MySQL, MariaDB, and so on and so forth. But when you install an instance of SQL Server, that instance resides within a computer, right? If you have a computer right here, remember, you have already passed the other level of security. This computer resides in a data center. There is physical security. This computer resides in a network. There is that network security. There is that device security, which now secures the computer itself. Within this computer now, you have an instance of SQL Server, right? This instance of SQL Server, you need to secure it. And how do you secure that instance of SQL? Within this instance of SQL Server, there are two ways in which someone can get into that instance: using Windows authentication or SQL Server authentication to get into this instance of SQL. Now, when someone is able to get here into that instance of SQL, what do you need to do, right? The first thing is you need to create a login for that person on this instance. If I log into this computer, even if I breach every other thing and I'm able to log into this computer, now, do I gain access to that instance of SQL Server? That is a question. If there is a login created here that requires a password, then even if you get into this computer, you will not be able to get into SQL Server instance if you don't have a login created. So that is instant level security. At the level of the instance, when you have a login, which is just like permission that you give to someone, you can define what level of access that login is going to have on this instance. Does that login that you have created here, should it have sysadmin permissions, right? Which means it is the super permission on that instance. It can delete things within this instance, do anything if someone has that level of permission on that instance. So once you go through your instance level security, you create the login, you define what level of permission this login has on the instance, right? So that is instant level security. Now the question to you is, what are the server roles that you have under an instance? You have sysadmin, have backup admin, a lot of them, right? So you need to know what group you need to create a login and what level of permission that login should have on the instance. That's the first thing. Now, the second thing that you want to look at is database level security. Within this instance of SQL Server, right, there is a database in here. If someone gets through the Windows computer, gets to the instance of SQL Server, you can manage the permission that this person has at the database level, right? Which means that you have created a login here. Depending on the level of permission that login has on the instance, you can say on this database, this is the only permission that you have. So that now is database level security. I can decide that someone will have only read permission. You can only read on this database. You can be a database owner, right? You can read and write. You can be a DDL admin to be able to create objects within this database. That is database level security. Now, when you get past the database level security, you can look at object level security. An object in SQL Server, such as a table, such as a schema, such as a view, such as a store procedure, you can assign permission to people, securing the database by giving basic level of permission on those individual objects, right? So that is object level security. And now, when you even get to the object level security, where I can say that this person has permission only on this table, this person has permission only on this store procedure, you can go down to talk about the data level security. Now, if someone breaks through the network, right? If someone breaks through the network, breaks through the physical security, breaks through the instance of SQL Server, gets right down to the databases, gets right down to the object, right? What other level of security can you provide for your data? In SQL Server, when you talk of data level security, you're looking at things like securing data that is at rest or data that is in flight, right? Data in flight simply means data is leaving your on-prem to Azure, or someone logs into the website and is making a transaction. That data travels over the network to get to your database. That is data in flight. So how do you secure that? Within SQL Server, you have key solutions to secure your data, which the first you're going to be looking at is always encrypted, right? That is a solution within SQL that encrypts your data in flight. Apart from always encrypted, you also have what is known as transparent data encryption. Transparent data encryption is the solution that will encrypt your data at rest. You know, that is known as file level security, where if someone gets hold of a backup copy of your database, they will not be able to restore it on another instance, you know, if they don't have the certificates or keys that were used to encrypt that particular database, right? So that is a file level security that you put on that particular data, right? If someone gets hold of your data and log files, they will not be able to attach it on another server because they have been encrypted with certificates and keys unless they actually get hold of that. Then the next thing you're looking at, you're also looking at dynamic data masking. When you get into this database, you get into the tables, you can now be seeing social security numbers, email addresses. What can you do to secure that? You can mask some of the data. For example, when you go online and you put in your credit card number, you see that the first 10 or 12 characters, you know, they just get marked as XXX, right? They have been masked. That is dynamic data masking, right? So that is one thing that you can use to secure your data. So the overall thing here is that with security, there are a lot of levels of security, and you as a database administrator, being a member of that IT team, you need to have this general knowledge, right? So now, when you look at all of this, these levels of security or layers of security, you can boil that down to start talking about the principle of least privilege, right? If you're giving someone permission on resources within your environment, you want to follow the principle of least privilege. Give them the basic minimum permission that they need. If someone needs permission to be able to read just on a specific object, you don't need to give that person, the owner of the database, permission. You need to give them permission just to be able to perform the specific task that they need, right? So that is very important. If you try back to address this question, how do you manage or ensure security in your environment? What I would say is security is a very broad and very important aspect in my organization. In my organization, we follow security at the various layers, starting from the physical security to, network security, and before we even get down to a database level security. Me being a database administrator, I'm really focused in securing the databases, whereby I provide permission to users following the principles of least privileges, right? I also utilize SQL Server inbuilt tools to make sure that my data is secure. Some of the tools that I have used to secure my data include transparent data encryption, always encrypted, dynamic data masking, right? And I create logins and users, and I assign permissions following the principles of least privileges. So now, this is just the general concept. If you have follow-up questions, how do you set up transparent data encryption? How do you set up TDL, always encrypted? How do you give permission just on a specific object on a database? Those are things that you need to bring in your technical skills to address. But overall, you have demonstrated a bigger knowledge about security, which is very important, right? So there are a lot of follow-up questions that you can get about security. They can also ask you a question like, someone gets up to you today requesting sysadmin permissions on a server. What do you do? So every company will have an approach, right? You need to submit an access request. They review to make sure that, okay, you actually need that permission before you go ahead and you grant that kind of a permission. So it just depends in the various companies where you work. So if you really find this interesting, like and share. You know, at JoinIT, we're building an IT community where we're trying to help everyone to get started into IT. You know, it does not matter if you took your training at JoinIT. If you want to join our interview prep classes, please reach out to us, 210-993-7190. And just to inform you, our next SQL Server Database Administration training is starting August 27, 2022. We'll have a new student orientation starting from 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. So guys, thank you. If you enjoyed this, preach the word out there, talk about JoinIT, refer your friends. Our training is hands-on. We explain it to the bare minimum where everyone can understand and get into IT. This is how we do it at JoinIT, right? Thank you all and hope you enjoy it. Stand by for other videos that will help you secure your dream database administration job. Thank you. You have a great one.